Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Tackling extremism before it takes hold. That is the aim behind the new government's plan to protect children from radical views. The Education Secretary, Nicky Morgan, launched a new website, Educate Against Hate, giving teachers and parents more information and more support. There'll also be a crackdown on illegal and unregistered schools. But is this the best way to prevent children falling under the sway of extremists? Our Home Affairs correspondent Darshana Soni has this report.
It's the school that made headlines when 4 of its young girls ran away to Syria to become jihadi brides. Ever since, the government has been grappling with the difficult question of how to protect impressionable young minds from radical views. Today, the Education Secretary chose the Bethnal Green Academy to launch a new website she thinks will help.
It's hard to comprehend that promising, bright girls from this school took the decision to leave their homes and their families.
The website offers advice for parents on spotting the signs of extremism, although some of the so-called danger signs, such as spending excessive amounts of time online, could of course apply to any teenager.
Would something like this have stopped the 3 schoolgirls from going to Syria?
I wouldn't imagine so.
Tasneem Akunji represents the families of the girls who ran away. All were married off to fighters, and 2 have since been widowed at the age of just 15. Their families haven't heard from them in 3 weeks and fear they may have been injured in the recent airstrikes.
The last communications was a very short one, which simply stated that that they were okay, that bombing was happening fairly close to them. When young people make the decision, and it's a very radical decision, to leave their homes, families behind and to go to a war zone, then I would imagine that a website isn't really going to be the thing that's going to block them from that decision or that course of action.
This is the 3rd big announcement on extremism in the last week. Some Muslims have criticised the way that their communities are constantly being linked to radicalisation. And they warn that the government risks alienating the very groups they say they're trying to reach out to.
It's spreading hate for no reason. There's always on headlines, Muslim, Muslim, Muslim. Someone does something Muslim, but there are other people out there that do crime.
We showed the new website to parents in Whitechapel Market. Hasina Begum was shopping with her husband and daughter Saida.
As a parent, would a website like this, do you think, help you?
It'd be good actually, something, so how to protect my child, then obviously would be more alert and
It's just everywhere, and I think people are just, personally I'm getting tired of hearing it, and I think it's causing a lot of, I don't know, maybe like a bit of tension between people.
There are also questions about whether the government's website would be a match for the propaganda churned out by ISIS.
This website will not be helpful to an individual who already is down the pathway of radicalization in a violent extremist way. This website is perhaps going to be helpful for parents or teachers that really don't have any understanding in this space or want to get a gauge of how to interact with children.
The Education Secretary today insisted that the new website will give parents and teachers the expertise to keep their children safe. Darshana Soni, Channel 4 News.
Well, as she unveiled the new website today, the Education Secretary, Nicky Morgan, said spotting the warning signs were key, and that some groups, including the controversial human rights group CAGE, should be banned from schools and campuses. I spoke to her earlier and asked her exactly what she thought all this would achieve.
And it's very much aimed at helping those who work with young people to answer some of the questions about the way that you engage with them, about the debates of today, how you identify potentially when you're going from conversations about what's happening towards extremism and radicalisation, how to spot those signs.
The difficulty is when you look at this advice, you wonder just how specific it is. It talks about watching out for young people who spend excessive time online or on phones. That describes virtually every child between 10 and 16, doesn't it?
Well, but the point is actually, what are they doing online? Who are they communicating with? And we all know as parents, those are conversations that we do need to have with our children at school. Again, before Christmas, we introduced rules about schools making sure they're able to find out what young people are looking at online.
But how specifically can they do that?
Well, because obviously there are ways of looking at browsing histories. And again, as parents, I think we all have a duty to know as much as we can what our children are doing online, who they're talking to. But the other point is about having conversations with them about what they should do if they are approached online, if views are put to them. And the website is about building resilient, confident young people who develop those critical thinking skills to be able to challenge hatred that is put to them online. Sadly, as you saw from the school I was at today, Bethnal Green Academy, there were 3 girls who have now fled abroad because they have believed what they have been told.
And there is an argument that this is clearly directed specifically at Muslims. The website is very unspecific, but everybody is quite clear that that is who you are talking about.
No, the website is non-specific for a very important reason, which is that extremism can apply just as much to far-right fundamentalism as it could to Islamist
But sorry to interrupt you just for a moment. You talk about the warning signs, a recent and rapid conversion to any new religion. I take it if a teenager comes home and says they want to be a member of the C of E, you wouldn't expect teachers to press alarm buttons.
No, of course not. And I think the trouble is that, of course, people can knock holes in all of this, and they can say, what about this, what about this? You know, we are dealing with a threat to our young people who can be vulnerable, and we want to help them to build their resilience, to be able to challenge what they are seeing.
I mean, there are many people who think you must be taking a much more proactive approach. What about banning groups like Cage, for example?
Well, I mean, I certainly think that Cage has absolutely no place in our schools or on our campuses. There is space for those who have views that offend us, for controversial people, but those whose views are about incitement to hatred. And that's an ongoing debate.
So they should be banned?
Well, it's an ongoing debate about banning various organisations or making sure that we are able to challenge the warped ideologies that they are perverting. And I certainly don't want to see Cage being hosted in any way in any schools.
On the subject of ban, I mean, would you personally like to see a ban on face veils in school, as has been discussed?
Well, I back schools to make the decisions about the uniform policy for both staff and for pupils as well.
You're in government. Why not take a firm line on it yourselves?
Because one of the things we're talking about is the British values that we want people to subscribe to in this country. And one of those values is the mutual respect and tolerance of other faiths and beliefs. And there are people who will make a perfectly valid decision that they want to wear a veil. We back, the whole of our education policy is about backing frontline professionals.
Nicky Morgan, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in response, Cage told us tonight they challenged the Education Secretary to provide evidence on how their work calling for due legal process amounted to incitement to hatred.